Okay, we're starting this week's Midweek Howl, the non-paranormal part of the From the Shadows podcast. And
do I need to start? Do we need to
here?
Hold on a second. Time out.
My words. Okay,
what?
I was trying to choose my words carefully, but what do you got?
I was thinking maybe do we need a divorce, and that way you don't have to say that.
Like make us separate from the
make our own me and you our own podcast separate from your paranormal. I mean, I don't want to be Bud Light dragging you InBev down. So you know what I mean. You guys are like InBev, and I'm just
listen. Even Bud Light's making a comeback. Didn't you see Kid Rock they saw him this weekend drinking Bud Light? It was all.
No, I just seen where August Bush the 7th or whatever offered to buy him back.
It's just like everything else is nothing but a publicity stunt by those guys, So, but what's not a publicity stunt is the fact before we got on here, I was complaining. I just sold some football cards on eBay, and now the government wants to take their share of it. And but that's not going to rain on the parade of the first sports card you just bought on eBay.
Which is all about publicity. That's what I almost said. Well, speaking of publicity, I bought into the publicity.
You bought into the publicity. Uh-huh. So the other day, our good buddy, Chris Hahn, the former WWF wrestler turned actor, stuntman, extraordinaire.
Yes, Mr. Ohio.
Mr. Ohio, yeah. And that's what I tell him.
He embodies everything positive about Ohio.
Yes. Too bad he had to shave that mullet off many years ago for but anyway. Did
he send that to you? Is that how you saw it?
Yeah, he was talking to me. He called me on the phone because which leads us to something else. That wedding gift. He came to the wedding, of course, of me and Christy this summer, and of course, he forgot to bring the gift. His wife was giving him a bunch of crap because he left it on the table. So he's been trying to get over to Cyrus to give it to me. Okay, and I had no idea what this gift was, and he called me this week. He said he'd be over doing some other stuff because he does some work in the court, training those. Oh gosh, that's a whole nother story. I sent you that story
like
bailiffs
too, or whatever.
Yeah, no, he trains the people. For the judge, the people that are on probation, tries to get them on a right path or whatever. Anyway, so he goes, "You're never going to believe what a buddy of mine picked up at a baseball card show in Columbus," and he sends me, and it was from 1992. It's a Classic. Classic used to be a card company like Topps and Donruss and Upper Deck or whatever. And it was a WWF wrestling card set. And it was the Road Warriors rookie card. And they're pinning none other than Chris Hahn in the picture. Okay. Pinning him in the picture. And it's not, and I don't know the Road Warriors individual names, but I think Chris said it was not Laurinaitis's dad, the guy that played for the Buckeyes and the Rams. It wasn't his dad, it was the other guy who has passed away. But interestingly, then he followed it up, and I think I sent with the picture. So it was his very first WWF match in Rochester, New York. And a high school friend of his was going to college outside of Rochester, and he came to the match and took pictures of Chris wrestling the Road Warriors. So ironically, not only does he have a sports card of that, but he also has the pictures from the match. And so he sent me one where, the Road Warriors got him up in the air and one's coming off the ring or off the rope to clothesline him or whatever. So it was super cool. That's kind of a cool thing to have a buddy that, even though he wrestled as a jobber at the WWF, he was there doing it, man. It's like having a buddy that played one season in the NFL. We gonna make fun of him for only playing one season? No,
right.
It's hard to get to that. It's hard to get to that level.
Certainly harder to stay.
Oh, definitely. And Chris wrestled in that level for quite a few years and then did the regional stuff. And, he could barely walk because of it, but he survived, man. He survived, So it's, and like you said, your knee's hurting, so imagine what those guys feel like that do that to their bodies for years and years. Like, so what's your injury from?
I don't know. Just carrying the weight of America for 2 decades. Yes. I don't know. Yeah. You know what I mean? The Great War on Terrorism. I don't know. Get to the point. I bought the card. You bought the card. You're eagerly awaiting. I was ragging you. You sent it to me, and I said, dude, a true friend would have bought it.
Well, I
bought it as the first piece of sports memorabilia I've ever owned.
Well, I didn't even know it existed, and he said he had 4 of them, and he was going to give me one because I got on eBay
because I want to spend the $3 to buy it.
I was going to buy it. And he said, "Don't buy it. I'm going to give you one." And I'm like, "Okay." Well, then it turns out he shows up with my wedding present, and he can't find the cards. So the card that you bought, I would have probably bought.
Could be the last one. You know what? I've got a picture above my desk here. Hold on, I'm going to send you a picture of it, so you can post it on whatever things you post that people want to know what I'm looking at all the time when I'm looking at something. So this is what I'm looking at right here, and then I've got little pictures, little things around the cartilage of this frame, as you will see, and I'm going to put it right there by the picture of my last horse, my boys when they were little, just all kinds of stuff on this picture.
I think it would be fun to have Chris on this part of the show. He's been on the other. You said
he couldn't formulate a sentence.
Oh, come on! I didn't say that.
I thought that's what you said. I don't know. Maybe he couldn't spell something. I don't know.
Well, we're not going to give him a spelling.
He's a pro wrestler. He's not supposed to be able to, right?
But I think this.
Hey, they're like surgeons. They get paid for what they're capable of doing. Didn't we have this conversation? Yeah, pro wrestlers are like surgeons. They get paid for what they're capable of doing, not necessarily what they do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's what you got paid for.
You just tell him. I put him in the pro wrestling in with the surgeons that I've known.
Oh gosh, see that's a word. That's a word he would not be able to spell. Is surgeon
or reverence?
Either one. Either one.
He doesn't need to learn. We got spell check nowadays. You don't need to know nothing.
But I think he'd be fun. We've never had him on to talk about wrestling. And I think he'd be a good conversation to have on because I think because you know what, then you could bring up the Harley race story, which I think is one of the greatest stories.
Yeah, that's exactly. Get him on the calendar. Let's call the producer and get him on. Mm-hmm.
I'll do that. I think that'd be a fun. I think our fans would love to hear. I think the people that love this part of the show, especially, are probably pro wrestling fans.
I would think. I mean,
yeah. I don't want to pigeonhole anybody, but there got probably a lot of.
Hey, if they're not, they will be when they get done listening to me and him talk.
Holy smokes! So. Speaking of that newspaper article, did you read the newspaper article?
No, I couldn't get it to open on my phone.
Okay.
I don't remember what was going on in my life when you sent that to me, but I've had a tumultuous last couple of weeks.
So we had an incident here in Crawford County.
Yep.
And I'm just going to warn everybody that we may go down a road that might be offensive, but I'm
ready. My knee hurts, and I've been cutting grass when it's 100 degrees and 115 humidity or whatever. So it was either get in the swimming pool or do this podcast, and I chose to do this podcast to suffer. I've been reading the Old Testament, and it says I have to suffer for redemption.
You have to suffer. So
that's what I'm doing with you.
You're suffering with me. Thank you.
With the listeners, as they plod through life. Everybody plods through life, right?
Well, I thought maybe the listeners are suffering listening to me. I don't know. They're waiting.
Well, that too. I didn't want to tell you that, but yes, I got a friend of mine that texts me every couple of weeks or calls me and says, "Dude, how come Grove talks more than you?" And I said, "Well, he's just trying to get out, man. He's every writer's that way, right? They want to be they've got so much to say and nobody will listen to them.
Listen, I'm trying to play the straight man I'm trying to spark something that leads you on another tangent. People don't understand the work that goes into this, that I'm trying to set it on a tee for you constantly, hoping that you take the big swing.
This is like the
and hit a home run.
What I was going to say, the home run derby or something, right? You're just that dude pitching all those pitches. And the problem is because this leads us back to divorce, okay? Because we have tight guardrails on our normal show, we don't, you know what I mean? There's things I could tee off about every, dozens of things a day, but it's going to go in a good direction where I'll tell you right now, I'll alienate half of the world.
Yeah. And there's already enough of that, right? In my book, there's already enough of alienating half the world. Okay. I look at our job.
You want to bring people together.
I want to bring people together and they have some fun in the middle of the week. They can hear us complain. They can hear you tell some great stories. That's what I want. I mean, is there anything wrong with that? I don't want to alienate half the people, because most of the stuff that is alienating people is just nonsense anyway, from either way you look at it. But speaking of alienating people, I want to circle back to this story of this. There's no other way to say it, but what happened in our community last week, or came to light, it was just sickening. Okay. But I wanted to see if in your law enforcement career, if you had ever encountered anything like this, and what happened. And I'm only going to say what I know happened based on what's been released, because I may or may not know, of course I know people in these situations that know some other stuff, but the long and the short of it is this guy got called in by his probation officer for violating a protection order. And the officer that was looking at his phone, to try to corroborate the fact that he was, I believe, contacting this person he was told to stay away from. And the guy, who apparently is not very bright, says, well, why are you looking on my phone for the videos of the dog? And of course, that in and of itself gets the officer's attention. And he's like, well, what are you talking about? And he kind of leads him to these videos this guy took of him and his girlfriend or ex-girlfriend engaged in certain activities with her two dogs, which then led him to get into trouble for a whole other bunch of stuff, needless to say. And this is the guy's excuse for what was happening in those videos, is that he felt that his girlfriend being with their dog was better than her being with another guy and him having the chance of getting a disease. That was his rationale.
You put me to sleep here, because I couldn't open it because it was on Facebook. It was a Facebook thing. That's why I couldn't figure out why I couldn't open it. It's because you sent it to me Facebook. Okay. And the fact that the Bucyrus County puts that stuff on Facebook leads me to believe what kind of stuff's going on in that world.
Well, there you go.
The other thing I got to thinking, if that happened down here where I live, the police probate. First of all, what's it matter if they are making out with the dog? Because you got this country so goddamn screwed up now that they, we're not even going to go down the tranny road and all the other stuff. So maybe that dog was transitioned to a human.
Oh, jeez.
Or vice versa. Maybe, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Who are we to claim that we understand what was going through that canine's mind at the time? Okay.
Well, we can't assume that the canine do anything.
If a probation, and I can only imagine what a probation officer down here in the woods would say, they would look at that and be down here, especially the county I particularly live in, they would be relieved that it wasn't an underage kid or a family member. I mean, gee, Merry Christmas is just a dog.
Oh, God.
I mean, if that's all you've done.
Now, wait a second. You just talked about the county I live in. What's this?
Yeah, they don't put this shit on the Facebook. You know what they put on the Facebook when these out of towners come down here and get killed in the boat wreck or shoot each other? That's what they put on their they don't even have a Facebook, but when they do on Lake Expo, it's out of towners come down here acting stupid, you know.
In order to keep the out of towners out, or what?
No, we don't want to make fun of each other. Each other.
Well, I don't think they really were doing it to make fun of the guy. To be honest.
Well, they charged him with something, didn't they?
Oh yeah. He's going to, but
and that's my whole point.
Yeah, he was going to prison anyway for violating the protection order.
Did he get to I didn't see where he violated the protection order. I just thought he violated the dog.
No, he violated the protection order first, which led him into being called in and then showing them his phone. So yeah, it was on the
if I was on probation, I wouldn't have a goddamn phone.
Probably. So, you're probably better off, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would think, but I don't know. You know, I interviewed when I first moved back down there. I interviewed for probation parole, and they didn't hire me, so I don't know what to tell you what goes through those people's heads. But one of the questions they asked me is, if you just got out of a prison, what would be your first move or something? What would you do first? And I said, well, what I go to prison for? And one of them goes, well, does it matter? And I said, well, it matters a lot. First of all, I mean, if you do I don't know, you know what I mean? If you do some kind of half-ass shit, I could call my mom or grandma to come get me. I said, if I'd done some real bad stuff, I couldn't call, you know what I mean? Depends on who you can call, who you can befriend, who did you trespass upon to be in that situation.
Yeah, you're.
And they looked at me like I was the idiot. And then the next question was, okay, you were on parole and you want to run away. Where are you going? And I said, these are bad questions for me. Well, why are they bad questions for you? I said, well, first of all, I got some family resources. I got some resources and I've been around a little bit. So, and the guy goes, could you just answer the question? I said, I'd go to Greece. You'd what? I said, I'd go to Greek. I'd go to the Greek islands. I'd leave. Greece has kind of got some shady people around, and I'd just hang out like Jason Bourne, working the docks, be a fisherman or something, prey on the tourists and shit. You know what I mean? But if you think if I was going to run away and you think the best I can do is run to Arkansas or Mexico or something, come on.
The next trailer park.
Yes. I mean, you retards, I'm not even in it, and maybe that's why they didn't hire me, right? I'm not even in the, and then of course I made it to like the second interview where you had to go down and talk to the main lady that runs it. And I had a friend of mine, I got third-hand information that I was told, hey, first of all, she's probably not going to hire you. And I said, why not? And they said, there's 17 probation officers in this district, and there's only one man. She doesn't like men, and she doesn't like cops, and you are a cop, so she ain't going to like you. That's what a friend of mine said. So I thought, jeez. Yeah. And then part of me was like, okay, so if it's this obvious, somebody somewhere would be talking to her, right? Maybe.
You would think, right? I
go down to this office down here, and it's just I had to wait. I had to wait outside for a little bit. I go in there and say, hey, I'm here, for interview. Okay, so she's with somebody. You got to wait, whatever. And the office was the worst state office I've ever been in. It was beat up. The walls were terrible. It was the most rundown. And I started my career at the Missouri Department of Conservation, which is probably the pinnacle of state agencies in the state of Missouri. And I went to the Highway Patrol, MoDOT. There was, especially 35 years ago, there was a expectation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. Like it didn't look all run down. It was well maintained. Right. And
when the boss walked through there, and if something was screwed up, he immediately told somebody to fix it, empty that trash can, or he emptied it himself. You know what I mean? When I was a state trooper, you could go to general headquarters. I'm telling you, that building's 40 years old and it's spotless. Because I'm going to tell you what, I don't care what rank these guys are, they'll fix it themselves. They'll clean it themselves. You'll have a captain empty his own trash can before he lets it flow out. You know what I mean? It just ain't gonna get that way. We'll have a captain empty his own trash can before he lets it flow out. You know what I mean? It just ain't gonna get that way. So maybe I had a bad attitude when I finally got in to see her, but when I get in to see her, she's got a full-length Elvis poster on her door. Now, they're big into rehabilitation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that came up earlier in my first interview because I had to explain to him, back when I started my law enforcement career in 1992, if you had like what they call an unregistered sex offender, if you're a registered sex offender and you move to a different county or you move to a different residence, you by statute have 7 days to tell the sheriff or the police department where you're living. You know what I mean? There's a process in place that you have to tell the man where you're at, right? And I worked for sheriff that if it got day 7.5, your ass was back in jail. You know what I mean? There was no, hey, he couldn't get a ride, or he ain't got a car, or he's between, he's trying to find his way, he's trying to download a phone app. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You threw their asses in jail. And I could tell some of them in my interview kind of recoiled when I said that, because it's all about the client. That's what they call these inmates now, clients. Well, it's all about the client now. So anyway, I got to her office and it was full of foo-foo stuff. You thought we were I tell you what, you thought we were in like a showrunner's office in Hollywood or something, right? So it's got Elvis on the door and she's got a bunch of album covers and shit, you know what I mean, on the wall. And she's had a bunch of just, I don't know, man, like entertainment crap on the wall. You know what I'm saying? Movie posters and stuff.
It has no place in it. Has no place
I don't
in that
think,
office.
but apparently it softens the blow when you're dealing with these hardcore criminals.
Okay.
Because you don't want to look at them in the eye and say, hey, these are the rules, abide by them, your ass going back to prison. Apparently that worked for 150 years, but doesn't work anymore. You've got to be in touch with them, right?
Well, let's be honest. If it worked for 150 years, then we wouldn't have to change.
You're gonna this is a controlled. Well, I just told you this podcast is a controlled bowling tournament. We have got the guardrails up so we don't run in the gutter.
Okay, right? We'll stay out of the gutter.
This is the guardrail. This is the guardrail podcast. Remember?
This is good.
So I said, somehow, and she had a bunch of Elvis trinkets around, and she started off by saying, I hope you don't feel not offended, but I hope all this stuff Elvis doesn't bother you.
Well, it ain't like it was Jerry Lee Lewis.
And I said, no. I said, I tell you what, I said I was 12 or 13 before I realized he really wasn't my grandpa. She said, what? I said, yeah, my dad used to tell me all the time that was, I said, I knew who my real grandpa was for a long time. And he used to say it was Elvis. And then I said, well, I was 12 or 13 when he came clean with you. He came clean with us, me and my brother, my oldest brother. And she said, well, at least he came clean. And I said, yeah. I said, I think Marty Robbins is a better grandpa than Elvis was, because that's what he switched. You're right. It's not Elvis, it's Marty Robbins. So I didn't get that job either. So that's kind of the way it goes.
The job with the probation officer or as Marty Robbins' grandson?
Either one. I mean, either one. I did have, I alluded to last week and I didn't finish it. I got a super fan that offered me a job. He's been hard recruiting on me. Still
again? He's back at it?
Yep. And I got my application about half filled out, and I didn't go the rest of the way because I don't know. My barber was telling me that was just the worst thing in the world I could do.
Yeah, we did talk. Yeah, Joe the barber, right?
Yep. And he just said that's just the worst job, And
well, you better listen to the guy you trusted cutting your hair for 70 years or however long. How long did he cut? Oh, he cut
a long time. Mm-hmm. But you haven't even asked what kind of job it is.
Are you allowed to? Can you say on the air?
I guess I can. I don't know if I can or not.
What kind of job is it?
It's bus driver, school bus driver, part-time school bus driver, and drive football games and basketball games, stuff like that.
Really?
Uh-huh. And I told you, my mom did that. Well, my mom and dad were both bus drivers, but mom drove. When my mom drove the team bus for my youngest brother, went to every one of his away games for 4 years because she drove one of the buses.
Now, did they have is there like a list? Does the same person get to drive the bus all the time, or do you rotate?
They're so short, they'll take anything. I think is what's going on. There's a neighboring school down here where they made all the assistant coaches get their bus driver's license because the assistant coaches, like the offensive coach and the defensive, they each drive their own bus. Yep. The only coach that doesn't have to drive the bus is the head coach. And he drives a Suburban with an enclosed trailer with all the equipment in the back of it.
It's kind of how we did in college.
Yeah, back when I was in school, I thought we carried our own shit on the bus. Was that the way it was back in the 80s when we played?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You had your own.
And you carried it on the bus and had to hold it.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah. You had to hold it. You basically wore your pants.
Yes.
Like your pants on the bus and carry it.
So in lieu of a cell phone, we had to carry our pads. If you got bored, you could read your helmet.
Well, no, I had my 8-track. I had not my 8-track, but my cassette recorder.
Oh, you had a Walkman?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a Walkman. Walkman had been the Nike of the carry around music things. the cassette recorder. I probably had a Limp Man or something. You know what I'm saying? Like it was.
I don't even know what they had back in them days. Do you?
Well, they had Walkmans, but what I was saying is I had the Kmart special of Walkmans. It was probably like
Was Walkman a brand?
Yeah, Walkman's a brand.
See, I didn't know that at all. I mean, I don't even know.
Which now you see. Okay, so you say that about driving, being a bus driver and driving to games, and so my stepdad. When he graduated high school, and then he's about 6'7", 6'6", 6'7". He was a pretty good basketball player in high school, and he went to college for like a year, not even a year, probably half a year, and decided, what am I going to school for? I'm going to be a farmer anyway. So he came back home, and while he's farming, he got a job being a bus driver. Because
that's what drives buses. Yeah, that back in the old days,
it was farmers. And so back when he would have been 1 or 2 years into it, and he only drove for a couple of years because he said got to the point where he was going to kill somebody, but he couldn't. They wouldn't let him off when he needed to be in the field, and that was part of the deal. Like so they were going to a basketball game, and this guy who. His name was Steve Hartshoe. He was about 6'4", all Ohio basketball, all Ohio baseball, left-handed pitcher who got drafted a couple different times, but his mom and dad wouldn't let him go sign a major league deal, made him go to college. And he went to Indiana, and he was the freshman pitcher of the year in the Big Ten, sophomore pitcher of the year in the Big Ten, junior pitcher of the year in the Big Ten, then threw his arm out, of course. But
did they ever say sorry?
No, because he graduated.
Because they don't even realize it.
No, probably not. But he graduated. He's had a couple really good jobs. He lives in Chicago now. Shu does. But
like playing in the majors, good jobs, or selling insurance, good jobs. It brings me back to that here. I mean, you finish it, and I'll bring you back to what I was going to say.
So anyway, they're going to play maybe like a district basketball game. Okay, so they're in the tournament districts. My stepdad's driving the bus. They get about halfway to wherever they're going, and Shu realizes he didn't pack his basketball shoes. So he's they made him dress in nice clothes. Coach Sheldon made him, we always had to dress in like, sweaters and shirts. So Shu's got his dress shoes on, and luckily my stepdad wore his tennis shoes, basketball shoes to drive the bus. So he, of course, him being 6'6" and Shu being 6, he was the only guy there that had shoes big enough to fit.
So he took his shoes on a bus route. He took his shoes off and handed it to his kid.
So he wore the bus driver's shoes in the game, and my stepdad sat in the stands in Steve Hartshoe's dress shoes until after the game. Oh,
there you go. See,
which is
that's what makes America. That's the moral. That's the fiber of this country that we're losing right there.
Is it? I don't know. There's still stuff like that. Look, man, it's not as bad as what everybody makes it seem. Okay, I just don't buy into all the bad stuff. It's not that bad. People are still doing good stuff all the time. It just doesn't make for good headlines when good stuff happens.
Okay.
See? So there you go. But yes, so Shu never made it to the majors, had a very successful career in the Big Ten at Indiana University. Every time, I haven't seen him in a while. He's 7-8 years older than me. When he comes to town, I've run into him. Super great guy. just a funny guy. He was left-handed, so I think the goofiness. We always joke that the goofiness came from him being left-handed.
It could be, absolutely.
But I don't want to offend it. I don't want anybody to think that just because you're left-handed, you're goofy. But that was just our little, because so few people were left-handed back in the day when we were. But man, he could throw so hard it wasn't even funny. And they rode him like a dime store pony in college baseball and just ragged his arm right out, which is too bad because left-handed pitchers are a commodity.
My little brother told me the other day the reason why there's so many foreign guys getting into baseball because the American kids are wasted by the time they get 21, 22 with all the traveling baseball and all this other stuff. And I don't know if he's a truck driver, so I don't even know what he knows unless it's just betting on the sports book, and he's got to know such things, right? So,
well, maybe he's out there, he's driving, he's listening to the podcast to talk about it.
No, he doesn't listen to podcasts.
But now it seems like those guys pitching, if you don't, you're just waiting on your Tommy John surgery. You know what I'm saying? Like
that's why they have it so early now, because and I think I've told this on the podcast before. I listen to Stan Musial or somebody telling when did he die?
Ooh, I don't know, but he probably lived into the 90s. I'm assuming at least.
So I listened to an interview from him in the end. What I didn't know, how when they die, they start playing all this stuff. You remember how that, what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So when I died,
Stan Musial died January 19th, 2013. He lived longer than I thought.
Hey, so I was about to look it up. So they were playing a interview with him, and I don't remember how he segued into I don't remember what they asked him. Okay. And he just said the game has changed so much now, and they got on the pitch count. And I think I've said this before. He said, buddy, when we played, that was your game. And if you won in 90 pitches, good. And if it took you 290, don't drink so much the next time. You know what I mean? Because you owned it, baby. And if you think these other guys would come in from the bullpen and take a chance at losing and get an L on their name because you can't handle your stuff. And he said, and the guy was like, you guys could pitch 150 innings? He goes, yeah, because that's what they trained to do. And that was his point. He said, the reason why you got these kids that can't pitch more than 100 because they've never been trained it. They've never tried it. They've never, you know what I mean? They trained to 100, and by God, at 90, the coach is over there looking at them.
Well, do you?
And he said, I don't remember who's. He said, hey, I remember one time that so and so came in there and said, God, coach, my arm hurts. And they said, what? Somebody had a fifth in the dugout, and you'd go in the dugout and take a pull on something and go back out there and hope for the best.
Well, there's a reason, like Satchel Paige was still pitching when he was in his 50s and could go out and pitch a doubleheader and stuff, because that's what those guys did. They threw and threw and threw. And if you train yourself to do it, then you can do it. And all of our non-baseball fans are like, gosh, what are these guys talking about? But in the early 80s, Billy Martin was the manager of the Oakland A's, and he kind of went back to that style where all his guys that were pitching, they were gonna finish games, and he completely blew out a 4-person, or I think it was a 4-man rotation of guys who the first year they did it all had really good years, and then by 3 years later, none of them could even throw anymore. Now, because they had not trained themselves to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like they all had like double-figured complete games, and through 300 innings plus.
It's like me mowing the grass while going 110 degrees. My 14-year-old boy acted like he was dying, and I said, "You need me to mow for a little bit?" And he goes, "Well, what am I going to do?" I said, "Ride your 4-wheeler." He got on your 4-wheeler and rode it around while I stood out there with no hat on and mowed the grass at 110, and all he kept talking about was how hot it was.
By the way,
when I was your age, God, we would mow 3 of these yards and put up 100 square bales and
exactly.
Get in a car, drive illegally with no driver's license somewhere to meet up with some girls.
I never did that, but just for the record, Stan Musial was an all-star 24 times. And the only reason he wasn't 25 times is because he didn't play in 1945 because of military service. 24-time all-star.
Hey, and served in the military in the middle of them.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, think about that.
That is
probably
amazing.
For $100 a week or something. I don't know. Probably for nothing. Right?
You're right. You're probably right. Those guys didn't make that much money. But no, those guys were tough because that's the way they were trained to do. Now, I don't know how Stan Musial got along in the later part of his career, life, but he lived till he was 92. So couldn't have been doing, could have been all wrong.
Good Lord, maybe he pay his penance for all the sin he did out there in the Ball Diamond.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.